It was a Saturday morning, unusually quiet, the kind that carries a strange stillness. I leashed Max, my Labrador, and stepped outside. He wagged his tail like it was the best day in the world. For him, every day was. For me, it had become something else. We walked aimlessly, ending up at the park down the street. I hadn't been there in almost a year. The moment we entered, something inside me shifted, like the ground beneath me had a memory I couldn't escape. Max ran ahead, sniffing the grass, barking at squirrels like he used to. My eyes drifted toward the old oak tree near the lake. That spot, it hit me harder than I expected. That was where I met her, Emma. She had been sitting with a coffee, reading a book, smiling at Max when he sprinted toward her ball. She laughed and threw it back, and Max, being the traitor he is, chose her lap over mine. That day turned into weeks, those weeks into months. Our bond was quick, but deep. She loved dogs, especially Max. It was the beginning of something I thought would last. I sat on the same bench we used to share. The air smelled the same, wet grass, distant barbecue, and just a trace of flowers. The memories came in waves, no warning. I closed my eyes, letting myself drift into them. We used to walk that same path every weekend. She always carried dog treats in her bag. Max knew the sound of the wrapper before she even opened it. She'd smile, pat his head, and call him our baby. The world faded around me, and for a second, I was back there. Emma holding my arm, her head on my shoulder, talking about adopting another dog. We had plans, small, intimate ones that only made sense to us. She'd sketch our dream apartment on napkins. Max had a corner in every plan, every drawing. It wasn't just love between us. It was a shared dream wrapped around a wagging tail. But memory has a cruel way of turning warmth into ache. A couple walked past with a golden retriever, laughing, holding hands. I watched them like I was watching myself from another life. My chest tightened. I wasn't prepared for how real it all still felt. One day with Max, in this park, had undone months of carefully tucked away emotions. I didn't come here for this. I just wanted a quiet walk. But here I was, sitting under a sky that used to hold our promises, haunted by the sound of her laugh carried by the wind. Max trotted back to me, his eyes full of innocence, clueless about the weight I was carrying. I rubbed his ears, smiled through the sting in my eyes, and whispered, "You remember, don't you?" He licked my hand and sat beside me like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe some memories are never really forgotten. They just wait for the right day to return. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. Emma had this calm energy, the kind that made noise feel like silence. After that first meeting, we kept bumping into each other at the park. Eventually, it stopped being a coincidence. She started bringing coffee for both of us, sitting with me while Max ran wild. We didn't rush anything. It just happened. I'd talk about work, about how lonely the city felt. She'd listen, always interested, never interrupting. She spoke about her childhood dog, how he died when she was 16, and how she'd never found that kind of connection again until Max. It wasn't long before we exchanged numbers. Our walks turned into brunches, and brunches into dinners. She came over more often, and Max loved her. It was like he'd chosen her long before I did. Watching them together gave me a strange sense of peace. There was something about the way she fit into my world so effortlessly. My small apartment started to feel full. Full of her laughter, her books, her perfume. She left things behind on purpose, a sweater, her toothbrush, her favorite mug. It felt like she was building a home without asking for permission, and I let her. We started planning small getaways. Nothing big, just escapes from the city. The three of us would go hiking or drive to the beach. She'd take pictures of Max mid-jump, mid-bark, mid-sprint. Those photos are still somewhere on my phone. She framed one and placed it on my desk. A family photo, she called it. And in that moment, I believed her. I believed in us. We even talked about moving in together. We looked at places online, even went to a few open houses. She loved the ones with balconies and big windows for Max to sunbathe. She started sleeping over more often. Her keys sat next to mine in the dish by the door. Her laugh became the soundtrack of my evenings. I didn't see any cracks. Maybe I didn't want to. Sometimes she'd go quiet, her phone lighting up more than usual. I chalked it up to work. I never asked questions because trust wasn't something I struggled with until I should have. There were moments, tiny ones, where she felt distant even while lying beside me. I'd wake up and catch her staring at her phone, expressionless, as if she were somewhere else. She always smiled when I noticed, always reached for me. Still, nothing ever felt seriously wrong. I was too content to think anything was temporary. One night, she told me she loved me while we were watching a movie. Just blurted it out, no build-up. "I love you." I remember turning to her, heart racing, and saying it back. It was so easy, so certain. That night, Max lay at our feet, her head was on my chest, and I thought I'd found everything I'd ever been looking for. I had no idea that night would be one of our last real ones. It started with small things. Missed calls, unread messages, canceled plans. She stopped bringing coffee. Her reasons were always valid: meetings, deadlines, exhaustion. I told myself it was just a phase. Everyone gets busy. But the warmth in her eyes had dulled. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her touch lingered less. Max noticed first. He'd wait by the door longer, sniff her clothes differently, watch her leave like he knew something I didn't. I ignored the signs, convinced myself I was overthinking. Until the night I opened her bag looking for Max's treats and found a bracelet. Definitely not hers. It was a man's bracelet. Leather, worn, with initials engraved on the inside. Not mine. My hands froze holding it. She noticed the shift in my voice when I asked about it. She hesitated. "It's just something I found," she said too quickly. I didn't push. Not then. But something cracked inside me. The next week, she barely spoke. She left early, came back late, avoided eye contact. I checked her phone, not proud of it, but desperate. Messages from someone named Caleb. Long threads. Photos. Inside jokes. Plans. I read each one with numb fingers, heart beating so loud I couldn't hear anything else. She was with someone else. And she had been for weeks. I confronted her that night. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She just stared at me, tired, like the lie had worn her down. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said. "But it did. And I don't regret it." I asked if she ever loved me. She said yes, at first. Then said she felt trapped. Like we had settled too soon. Like Max and I were too stable. I stood there, unable to speak, while the woman I loved unraveled everything we had in seconds. She packed a bag, said she needed time, and walked out. Max tried to follow her. She didn't look back. The silence that followed was worse than the betrayal. The empty space where her things used to be. The missing coffee mug. The dent in the pillow where her head used to rest. Max stopped eating properly. He'd lie by the door for hours. At night, he'd sit near the window like he was waiting for her to come home. I wished I could tell him she wasn't coming back. That she'd chosen someone else. That the little family we built didn't mean enough to her to stay. I couldn't cry, not then. I just sat on the floor beside Max and listened to the quiet she left behind. Days blurred together. People asked where she was. I lied. Said she was away. Said we were fine. I didn't want the pity. I didn't want to explain how someone could love you so deeply and still leave without apology. I kept thinking about the moment she said she didn't regret it. That part played on a loop. No regret. Just a clean cut, like we never mattered. Like Max and I were just a chapter she closed when she got bored. Weeks turned into months. The pain didn't vanish, but it dulled, settling into a quiet ache I learned to live with. I stopped expecting her to walk through the door. I stopped checking her social media. I deleted our photos, one by one, except for the one of her and Max by the lake. That one stayed. Not because I missed her, but because Max looked the happiest he'd ever been. And in a way, so did she. I couldn't erase all of it. Some memories aren't meant to be destroyed, just accepted for what they were. Real, even if temporary. Max healed faster than I did. He went back to wagging his tail, barking at birds, chasing after his toys. It was almost like he'd accepted the change and moved on, teaching me to do the same.
Dogs don't dwell.
They grieve, then live again. I started running in the mornings. I switched to my routine. I painted the apartment. Donated her things I'd kept in a box too long. Every small step felt like claiming my life back. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, deliberate, necessary. I met new people. Not to replace her, just to remind myself I could. Friends invited me out, and I started saying yes. Conversations were shallow at first, guarded. But eventually I laughed again. Genuinely. Max remained my constant. My companion. The one who'd been there through the rise and the collapse. If anything, our bond grew stronger. He saw me at my lowest and stayed. No judgment. No explanation needed. Just presence. One afternoon, we went back to the park. I didn't plan it. It just felt right. Max darted ahead, full of energy. I walked slowly, looking at the familiar paths. The bench was still there. The oak tree hadn't changed. But I had. I sat down, not to relive anything, but to acknowledge that I'd survived it. That love, even when betrayed, doesn't have to destroy you. It can teach you. It can break something open in you and still leave space for healing. Someone sat beside me with their dog. We exchanged smiles, a few words. Nothing romantic, nothing promising, just human. And it felt good.
Real. Honest.
I realized then that the betrayal no longer defined the story. It was part of it, sure. A dark chapter. But not the last. I wasn't bitter anymore. Just wiser. I wouldn't love the same way again, but I would still love.
Carefully.
Openly. On my terms. As the sun dipped, Max curled beside my feet, content. I looked out at the water and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The past no longer held me hostage. It had shaped me, yes, but it didn't own me. I stood up, called Max, and we walked home. Not as a broken man, but as someone who had finally made peace with what was, and who was ready for what's next.